Hi, my name's Neil Redfern and welcome to what is now the 10th of my How I Shot This videos, where I talk you through how I took some of my favourite photographs. In today's video, I'm going to be talking you through how I took this photograph, using just one speed light, a Magmod snoot and something else. So the photograph I'm going to talk you through today was taken at Nicola and Nick's wedding just last weekend. It was a really beautiful winter wedding and I love being a part of it. I love winter weddings, but they do present particular challenges. Obviously the weather's normally quite cold, but the biggest issue from a photography point of view is that the sunset time is so early on in the day. So with Nicola and Nick's wedding, the sunset was about 4:30. So that meant that any photographs we wanted to take outside had to be done realistically before that time. Now that's fine, and we did that, but I also love to take creative portraits in the evening too. Now if we were in a city centre, which we weren't in this particular wedding, we can often still do that and go outside because there may be lots of passing traffic, creating good opportunities for photographs, or lots of ambient light, street lights and things like that which we can use. But this wasn't the case at this wedding. It was a relatively quiet place and outside there wasn't really any ambient light at all. This meant that for me to take creative portraits in the evening time, which is something that I still will always do regardless of where I am and what the weather's like, I had to concentrate on taking those creative portraits indoors. So for me, the trick to creating really nice indoor creative portraits using off-camera lighting is to try and find something which is bright that I can expose for, which when I expose for that item will bring down the exposure in the rest of the scene. So that can be something such as a lamp, ceiling lights, a candle, because when we expose for these bright things, the exposure in the rest of the picture will go very underexposed, and that then gives us the potential to place our bride and groom in those underexposed areas and light them. And that is exactly what I did here. So whenever I'm in a venue, especially in the winter, I will always be keeping my eye out for things like that. I don't mind moving things around to try and create compositions, but the trick is always to expose for the brightest thing in that scene. When we do that, the knock-on effect of the exposing for the bright thing is that the rest of the scene, the rest of the picture goes very underexposed. And in those dark areas, that's where I place my bride and groom, and then I just need to light them. Now this can be a really effective technique and works really well almost regardless of venue. Obviously it's nicest if we have quite an aesthetically pleasing venue, but even if we don't have that, you don't need much, just a lamp, a few candles, and we can start to create something which looks really effective. One of the things I actually like about winter weddings is that we do have so little light in the evening, because that gives me a lot of creative scope to create my own compositions and bring in my own light sources. It can actually be quite frustrating, I think, in the summer when the light can be there until well into the evening time, and that is quite difficult if you want to use off-camera lighting because there's lots of ambient light around which makes it difficult to underexpose. Now with winter weddings, because it goes dark so early, that's the complete opposite. Because it goes dark, we have lots of creative opportunities to bring in our own lights and create our own cool composition. So it's just a question of finding the right bright thing, whether it be a lamp or a candle to expose for, because when we do that, it opens up a whole world of creative opportunities, and that's where the really cool creative portraits can lie, and that's exactly what I did here. Now I can't promise you're not going to look a bit silly if you do this. In fact, you will look silly if you do this. But one really good little tip which will help you see the whole world underexposed, which in turn is going to help you see these bright objects which I'm talking about, is to actually squint your eyes. Because when we squint our eyes, everything becomes more underexposed naturally, and it's easier to start seeing the bright areas which I'm talking about. So if you go into a room that to your eye, may look quite bright, and you squint your eyes, you'll just start to pick out the brightest things. And that is basically what I do with my camera. By underexposing using my shutter speed, I'm underexposing the room to find the bright objects. And it's exactly the same if you squint your eyes. So I say, you might want to do this when there's no one around, but it really does work. So yeah, if you ever seeing me at a venue and doing this, that's the reason why I'm doing it. So I'm going to pass you over now to a behind the scenes video of where I first walked into the room where I took the photograph which today's video is about. As you'll see, there are huge chandeliers in this room, and after everything we've just been speaking about, you'll now understand all the potential that I saw in these chandeliers. As soon as I saw them, I thought about what would happen if I underexposed for them, and having lots of space in this room gave me so much creative possibilities. So I hope you enjoyed the video. So, whilst the bride and groom were having their wedding breakfast, I had a look around the venue to scout out locations which I could use to set up a creative portrait in the evening. I was extremely lucky at this venue because I found this amazing room, which was not only beautiful with so much space and huge chandeliers, but it was also completely empty. As I mentioned earlier, when looking for locations for a camera lighting portrait indoors, I'm always looking for bright highlights such as lamps, ceiling lights, candles, or in this case these chandeliers, because as you can see here in a video I took on my iPhone, as soon as I expose for these highlights, the rest of the room goes to almost complete darkness, and this is where the true creative potential of the location starts to show itself. As with any creative portrait, I like to start off with a safe shot first, before developing the idea into something more unique. My safe shot idea was to position the bride and groom here and backlight them, which is exactly what I did, but I knew that by developing the idea further and trying something which was perhaps a little bit riskier, I would be giving myself the potential of creating a shot which I would like even more. By taking the safer shot first though, I'm able to try out my second idea with no pressure, because it doesn't matter if the idea works or not. So, in readiness for the second shot which I would take of the bride and groom, I experimented by seeing what would happen if I changed the angle of the shot and shot through some crystals. You can see here the effect I got when I put a prism in front of the lens. Remember that I do all this experimenting whilst the bride and groom are having their meal, so I'm not wasting any of their time. In the end though, I decided the best thing I had in my bag to shoot through was this crystal ball. There aren't many situations where the crystal ball works well, but I thought that this was one of them. It gives a really cool effect which looks like fireworks, which I really like, and I thought would work really well for this shot. Now, one thing to note when shooting through things like prisms and crystals is that I always find shooting at 35mm to be the most effective focal length, so all my creative shots like this are taken on one of my 35mm lenses. As well as that, I also shoot these images at the widest aperture possible, and have the thing which I'm shooting through as close to the lens as possible. As you can see here, the crystal is so close to my lens that it's actually touching. So now that I knew what I was going to do for the second shot, I had to decide how I was going to light Nicola and Nick within the composition. As I had already planned to backlight them for the first and safer shot, I decided to frontlight them for this one. I still set up a speed light behind them, which as you can see here was set to full power, and I added a magmod grid as well to this speed light to limit the spread of the light, because in particular I didn't want the flash to light up the floor as this would have been distracting. To frontlight the bride and groom for this, I also set up a second speed light which was set to 1/8 power. As it was important that the light from the speed light would only hit the couple and not the floor, I also added a magmod snoot to this speed light. The snoot is an excellent way of really concentrating the light coming from the flash so that it only hits a very small targeted area, in this case the bride and groom. As I was concentrating on getting the images right, I didn't actually film myself taking the shots, but you can see here some of the shots that I took on the back of the camera. This is the raw file of my favourite shot. As it turned out, I didn't actually use the speed light behind the bride and groom, as I felt that it wasn't needed and could have been a bit distracting. Notice how because of the snoot, the light falling onto the couple from the front facing speed light was very concentrated, and none of the light from this flash lit up the floor. This is exactly what I was aiming for, because I felt that if any of the other areas around the bride and groom were hit by the flash, it could cause a visual distraction. There wasn't really much left to do in terms of editing this raw file, but now let's take the image into Lightroom and try and make it as good as we can. Once in Lightroom, the first thing I do is apply my preset. I then crop the image slightly to improve the overall composition. I then edit the image in two parts, the first being everything in the image except for the bride and groom. To do this, I use the radial filter to draw a circle around the couple and uncheck the invert mask tick box. This means that everything I change now will affect everything except for the bride and groom. To make the crystal ball effect stand out even more, I reduce the shadow areas of the background, together with the black slightly, before increasing the clarity. This really makes the firework effect stand out, and increasing the white balance temperature too. I then concentrate on the bride and groom, I didn't have much to do here, but I wanted to brighten up the bottom half of Nicola's dress just a little bit, as well as her arm and face. So to do this, I used a couple of brushes which would increase the exposure and carefully painted over the areas which I wanted to be a little brighter. After that, I just made a slight adjustment to the white balance temperature of the bride and groom before using another brush to darken down specific areas of the image where I felt you could see the background. Finally, I used a spot removal tool to clone out the flash. And with that, I was really happy with the image. I didn't think that there was any need to open Photoshop, so with these changes, the image was finished. And so here it is, the final image. Looking into my eyes. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. As always, if you have, I would really appreciate it if you could please leave a like on the video and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this in the future. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section. I absolutely love receiving comments and I try to reply to every single comment which I do receive. A massive thank you to everyone who's left such lovely comments over the last few videos which I've made. I really do appreciate them. It's really lovely to read through them all and see how much value people are getting from these videos, because the more lovely comments I receive like that, the more it just makes me want to make more and more videos for you, because it's really nice to know that people are getting such value from them. So again, a massive thank you. So from me and my little crystal ball, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.